Well, President Trump turns out to be the great uniter. He has already pulled together elements of the Republican Party that are typically far apart. And yes, I'm talking about those strong conservative constitutionalists and those weak-kneed, yellow-bellied, sap-sucking moderates known in Congress as the Tuesday Group. It's the Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday Group together again forever, thanks to the health care bill that President Trump and Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, tried to push through Congress last week. Didn't even come to a vote. It got yanked. And we're trying to figure out at this point why the process worked as it did and what could have been done differently. I guess we can look at it that way. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This is Your Right Angle. So, Bill, does it make any sense at all that the president and the Speaker of the House would actually bring this to a vote? Not just that, but that they'd bring it to a vote when both sort of polar opposite caucuses within their own party were at odds with it?
I think this is the first serious miscalculation that Donald Trump has made. And I think part of this comes from the fact that he's probably not used to the idea that Congress are not employees of his, that he simply can't just say, this is what I want to do and have it get done. That's going to take a little getting used to for him, I suspect. The reason the bill didn't pass, obviously, Scott, was that it appealed to, I don't know, no one. Needless to say, the progressives are trying to defend Obamacare, which is collapsing under its own weight. Conservatives wanted real health care reform. That's what we thought this thing was all about. And what we ended up with was a new Coke kind of variant that the Pepsi people didn't like and the Coke people didn't like. It was right down the middle. Nobody liked this bill. So why they had to run ahead with it so fast is a mystery to me. Trump says he would have rather done tax cuts first. I think that's true too. But back to the health care issue specifically, somebody had said that, you Republicans have had 7 years to come up with an alternative to Obamacare. And this is what the entire elections have been about for the last 3 cycles. And they don't have anything ready. I find that shocking. And if it weren't Washington, I find it unbelievable. However, just real quick, Scotty, there was a congressman, no, I've been a senator, Mo Brooks, basically, here's what he wrote. He wrote a 1-sentence answer to what should we pass. And here's what he wrote. He wrote, it's effective as of December 31st, 2017, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act is repealed, and the provisions of law amended or repealed by such act are restored or revived as if such act had not been enacted. One sentence.
And Bill,
done.
wasn't that what the Trump supporters thought they were going to get? I mean, we have video, which I've seen in recent days, of course, because the left is trotting it out and some on the right are trotting it out, basically showing candidate Trump saying to these people, hey, we're going to repeal Obamacare right away. I mean fast, people. I mean when I get in there. And now we're 61 days into his term. Not only have we not repealed it, but this milquetoast bill was put forward when it didn't have a chance. I guess you've already said that this is a misstep. I don't know why I'm pressing you further on this.
Just only because, some reporters during the first week or two of Trump's presidency wrote with astonishment. I'll never forget this as long as I live. One of them wrote something to the effect, very much like, Donald Trump seems to have this weird obsession with keeping his campaign promises. I mean, that's really what the journalists wrote. And I think Donald Trump has a weird obsession with keeping his campaign promises. I think going into the election, Donald Trump's position on health care was what I thought was his weakest. I thought that was the weakest part of his portfolio, the part I was most worried about. But hopefully we'll learn some lessons from this. And, we have 2 years of power. It's just that simple that we can count on. And we'd better get some things done, or else if we don't get this thing repealed and actual private sector health insurance in there, then both houses are going to go completely Democrat because no Republican's ever going to vote for a Republican candidate again.
So, Steve Green, after the vote that didn't happen, things get even weirder because President Trump immediately, like at 3:31 in the afternoon, when I think the vote was supposed to happen at 3:30 or 3 o'clock, he calls up the Washington Post, then he calls up the New York Times, and he says to both of them, Paul Ryan's my man. Paul Ryan didn't do anything wrong. The House Speaker did the right thing. He had his heart in the right place. Man, I don't blame Paul Ryan. It's those darn Democrats. Then, within a few hours or a couple of days, it was that darn Freedom Caucus. They're standing in the way of things. Yet still, as far as I could tell, I checked out his Twitter feed today, right before we shot this, not a peep about the role that the so-called Tuesday Group, the group of moderates headed, co-chaired by Charlie Dent, my old congressman from Pennsylvania, not a peep about the fact that they were as resistant to this and as effective at resisting it as was the Freedom Caucus. What do you make of this, the political implications of this reaction from the White House?
Oh boy, I don't know what to make of this thing. Surely the Germans must have a word that means despise and feel sorry for at the same time, and that's where I have Paul Ryan pegged right now, because you couldn't.
It's called Wehrmacht.
Yeah, there you go. And it's coming to France this fall.
It's like those Germans have a word for everything. Go ahead.
They really do. A good Steve Martin reference. Look, Paul Ryan had the world's worst job to do carrying Trump's water, because Trump's campaign promise was basically, we're going to keep the good parts of Obamacare and we're going to get rid of the unpopular parts of Obamacare. But it's the unpopular parts of Obamacare that made it kind of sort of temporarily work up until this point when the death spiral begins. So Paul Ryan had this job of doing the impossible. He had to square Trump's circle, and it couldn't be done. But he didn't have the guts to stand up to the president and say, look, we have to do this first as a clean repeal. Then we'll get to the issues and we'll take our time and we'll do it right. Instead, he presents this thing as take it or leave it. Trump's guy, Steve Bannon, shows up and tells the GOP House caucus, we're talking about elected members of Congress, that they have to take this or leave this. That's what he told them on Friday, which is not something you can say to an elected official. Look, we all get a laugh out of what's his name, the Democratic congressman who was afraid Guam would tip over. What was his name?
I don't remember.
He's still serving. Anyway,
let's call him generic Democratic congressman.
Democrat congressman. And the admiral or general or whoever it was who was being questioned, just completely straight-faced said, no, sir, we don't anticipate that happening. Because you can't insult a member of Congress straight to his face if you are not an elected member of Congress. You cannot do that. They earned a certain amount of respect, even when they're afraid Guam is going to tip over. And Ryan presented as all or nothing. Bannon presented as all or nothing. And now we're left with this huge mess, and the political fallout's just beginning.
Well, listen, folks, my first thought when I heard how this thing went down or failed to go down was, gee, I wonder what the dyed-in-the-wool Trump can do no wrong people are going to say about this. And I think it took roughly 40 seconds for something to appear on Facebook, which is basically one of my Facebook friends saying, this is Trump's way of sticking it to Ryan. Ryan Care just died. Now we can get the real repeal of Obamacare. And I am grateful to my colleague, Bill Whittle, who has taken a much more sensible approach to this thing, which I think, Bill has been enthusiastic about a lot of what the Trump administration has done so far, as have I about some things. But he's not completely with the blinders on and not willing to accept the fact of the matter is that if this isn't something that was really bobbled, it sure looks like it. Now, if there is a second shoe to drop here, I can't imagine what it is. I mean, it just seems, everybody was probably saying, well, Trump has never done things like traditional Washington does. And in traditional Washington, he'd essentially be a lame duck president at this point because of his massive failure on what was going to be one of the key elements of what he was trying to accomplish. So he must have some brilliant other plan. Frankly, the public face that he's given to it right now, which is, don't worry, the Democrats will come crawling to me asking me to repeal Obamacare when it explodes. Now, all during his campaign, he said basically it had already imploded. So I guess we're going back into the explode thing of the constant implosion and explosion. I'm willing to give the guy a chance. Obviously, we elected him for 4 years. Let's see what happens. But you can't approach a legislative body without having votes in hand. You don't go there unless you're calling people out and saying, I'm going to make you vote on this so that the public can see where you stand. But you can't do that if both ends of the spectrum are against it. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and Scott Ott, this is Right Angle. We thank the members at BillWhittle.com for their support in making it possible.